The last customer is gone. The door is bolted. The shutters are up across the front of the shop. The street outside is narrowed to a strip of dark, the lantern light from other houses falling in thin lines through the gaps in the wood. In a lane off Cheapside, in the city of London, a woman named Joan is sitting down at last. She is a draper, a seller of cloth. One of the essential trades of any prosperous city, the trade that clothes the lawyers and the merchants and the aldermen's wives, the trade that begins with thread and ends, after many hands, draped across a living body. Every morning she opens the shutters, arranges the bolts of cloth on their trestles, greets the first customers before the bells of St. Mary Le Bow have finished ringing. And every evening, when the selling is done, there is a ritual. The counting of the coins, the balancing of the ledger, the slow, deliberate closing of the day. Tonight, like every night, Joan will balance the accounts before rest. Let us join her as the shop quiets. The shop occupies the ground floor of a narrow timber-framed house. This is the standard arrangement on the lanes off Cheapside. The tradesman lives above the work. 3 or 4 stories of timber and plaster rising above the street, each floor jettied slightly out beyond the one below, a pattern so common that the upper stories of houses on opposite sides of a lane nearly touch overhead. Joan's shop has a wide front opening that by day serves as both window and counter, the lower half a hinged board that drops outward to become a display surface, the upper half folding up to let in light and air and the attention of passers-by. Now both halves are closed and latched. The interior is close and warm. A small fire burns in the corner hearth, more for light than heat, this time of year, but welcome either way. The firelight catches the bolts of cloth stacked along the walls, deep madder red, indigo blue, undyed wool the color of cloud, a length of green damask that is the most expensive thing in the room and has been so for 6 weeks. Joan is at the table. She is a woman of 41. Dark-haired, with gray beginning at the temples. Her hands are clever hands, quick and precise, accustomed to handling cloth, to feeling quality in a weave, to folding a length of fabric without a wasted motion. She has opened the ledger. The ledger is a bound book, 8 inches tall and 5 across. The cover is plain calfskin, worn at the corners where her hands grip it open. The pages are thick paper, cream-colored, cut with a slight roughness at the edges that catches the light when she turns them. She bought it 4 years ago from a stationer near the Guildhall. It was expensive. It will last another 4 years if she is careful with it. She opens it to the current page. The entries from this week stretch down the right-hand side. Her hand is a clear italic, the letters small and evenly spaced. She learned to write from her father, who had been a draper before her and who had kept his own ledgers with the same deliberate care. He had a saying: "A ledger that lies to you is worse than no ledger at all." She has never forgotten it. She picks up the pen. She begins with what she knows without looking. The Holland linen to the wife of the cloth merchant in Friday Street. 3 yards at 14 pence the yard. Paid in coin, immediately. The 2 yards of black surged to the minister's household. They had sent a maidservant who paid correctly and did not linger. The length of russet wool, 5 yards, to the man whose name she did not catch but whose face she will remember. He paid half and promised the rest by Thursday. She has his face but not his name, and this is a small worry she will set down as accurately as she can and hope he returns. The ribbon. She almost forgot the ribbon. A yard of silk ribbon, white, to the young woman who came in just before closing and took a very long time deciding. Paid. She writes each sale in order, down the column. The date. The goods. The quantity. The price. The method of settlement. Whether paid or outstanding. This is not a glamorous task. There is no moment in it that feels significant. But without it, the week becomes a blur. The month becomes a guess. The year becomes a fiction. She has known tradespeople who did not keep proper books. She has watched some of them fail. The pen moves. The column grows. She draws the cash box from the shelf beneath the table. It is an iron-bound wooden box, not large, with a lock she trusts. The key lives on a cord around her neck during the day and under her pillow at night. She opens it. The coins are sorted already. She does this as a habit throughout the day, sliding each coin into its rough group as it comes in. Pennies together, halfpennies, groats, shillings, a small number of half-crowns. She counts them now. This is a pleasure she allows herself to acknowledge. Not the wealth itself, she is comfortable, not rich, and the distinction matters, but the act of counting. The way a coin feels in the fingers. The slight weight of silver. The sound of the coin touching the pile. She moves through them methodically. Counting in her head. Pennies first. Her father counted coins the same way. She can see his hands. He had large hands for a man of modest height, wide palms, thick fingers, the same quickness her own hands have. He used to count aloud, quietly, so she could follow along. Teaching her without announcing that he was teaching. She learned the trade the way she learned most things. By watching, then by doing, then by being trusted with more until there was nothing left to be trusted with and she was simply doing it herself. He died 8 years ago. The shop passed to her. There was a brief, painful period when certain customers and neighboring tradespeople assumed a woman alone could not manage a draper's business and behaved accordingly. She had managed it. Steadily. With the same books her father had kept, updated and expanded. Those people trade with her now without comment. She finishes the pennies and moves to the groats. Counting. There is a separate page in the ledger for outstanding accounts. She turns to it now. This is the most complex page. The list of who owes and how much and since when is not a simple sum, it is a portrait of relationships. The customer who always pays by the end of the month, without reminder, and has done so for 7 years. The household whose credit she extends carefully because the husband is reliable but the wife sometimes orders beyond what the household can sustain. The man with the russet wool, whose name she still doesn't know. She adds him. Unknown man. Russet wool. 5 yards at 10d. PD 2 shillings 1d. Owes 1 shilling 11d. To pay Thursday. She looks at the entry. The entry is honest about her own uncertainty. Unknown man. This will bother her until Thursday. If he comes, she will learn his name and correct the entry. If he doesn't come, she will wait another week before she lets herself worry properly. Outstanding accounts are not losses until they become losses. She has learned not to grieve too early. The door at the back of the shop opens. Her daughter Margaret looks in. She is 13, quick-eyed, with the particular energy of a child who has been patient as long as she intends to be patient. "Are you nearly done?" "I am not nearly done," Joan says, without looking up. "Supper is on the shelf." "I know. I've already eaten." "Then you are finished. Good night." A pause. "Can I sit with you?" Joan considers this. Then, sit quietly. Margaret comes in and takes the stool by the hearth. She draws her feet up beneath her and watches the fire. This is acceptable. Margaret watching the fire is quiet. Margaret watching her mother is not quiet, it involves questions. The fire settles and it's great. The coals shift. Joan returns to the ledger. She reaches the shillings. There are 11 of them. She counts them twice. Both times, 11. She marks the total in the margin of the ledger page. Not in the column yet, she wants to finish the full count before she adds up. The shillings are a variety of ages and conditions. This is normal. Coinage circulates for a long time before it is melted or lost. Some of these coins are older than she is. One bears the profile of a king who has been dead for 30 years. She holds it for a moment. The coin is worn enough that the face is half erased. Just the curve of a nose, the suggestion of a crown. Someone had earned this coin and spent it, and someone else had earned it and spent it, dozens of times, before it arrived in her box today. She sets it on the pile with the others. She doesn't know who brought it in today. One of the day's transactions, she thinks the linen sale, but she's not certain. It is hers now. Or rather, it passes through her hands now. Briefly hers, until she spends it on cloth from the wholesalers on Aldersgate Street, and it passes through other hands. Beyond the shutters, the lane is winding down. She can hear it the way she has learned to hear it, as a text she knows how to read. The particular quietness that comes after 7 in the evening is different from the quietness of early morning. One is a quietness of not yet. The other is a quietness of completion. Footsteps. Someone walking quickly, past and gone. A voice. Male, she thinks, calling to someone at a distance. One word, indistinct. The creak of a sign swinging in the breeze. The ironmonger 2 doors down has a sign that has needed tightening for a month. She notices it and then stops noticing it, as she always does. The fire shifts. Margaret, on the stool, makes no sound. Joan finds this slightly suspicious. She glances over. Margaret has fallen half asleep, her head tipped sideways, her eyes at half-mast. Good. Joan returns to the shillings. 4 half-crowns. These she handles with particular care. They are the largest denomination that changes hands regularly in a shop like hers, enough money to matter, to feel like something. She checks each one. This is not distrust of her customers. It is professionalism. Clipped coins, coins deliberately shaved at the edges to steal a little silver, are not common but not unheard of. The weighing of large coins is simply good practice. She has a small brass scale on the shelf for this purpose. She weighs them. All four, correct weight. Clean edges. Good coins. She sets them together in the corner of the box. The total is accumulating in her head and in the margin of the ledger. She will not add it up formally until she has counted everything. Adding too early is how errors happen. The mind becomes satisfied and stops watching. She has counted too early before and regretted it. She closes the box and turns back to the ledger. Now the addition. She works down the column, adding in the margin. Her arithmetic is reliable but not effortless. She is fast enough, but she double-checks the totals that matter. This is not lack of confidence. It is the knowledge that errors have a way of hiding in the additions you were most sure of. The total for the day, 12 shillings and 4 pence in coin. 1 shilling and 11 pence outstanding, plus the older outstanding amounts on the previous page. She writes both figures cleanly at the bottom of the column. Then she turns back 2 pages, to the running account of the week. She adds today's coin total to the week's running total. The week is looking reasonable. Not remarkable, but reasonable. Edmund's voice comes to her, her father's voice. She means, not a man named Edmund. Reasonable days accumulate into a life. She thinks this thought is hers, but perhaps it was always his. She looks across the room at the green damask. It has been there 6 weeks. This is the cloth that troubles her. It arrived in a larger shipment from her wholesaler. She had ordered 6 yards of plain green wool and received instead 6 yards of this, a woven damask with a repeating pattern of stylized flowers, green on green, visible only in certain lights. It is beautiful. She acknowledged this the moment she unrolled it. It is also more expensive than what she had ordered, and more expensive than most of what she sells. The wholesaler had insisted it was an improvement on her order and refused to adjust the price. She had paid it, because the relationship with the wholesaler is worth more than the argument over 1 bolt of cloth. But she had not forgotten. The cloth needs the right buyer. Someone with both the taste to see it and the money to pay for it. She has had 3 people examine it. None has bought. She is patient, but not infinitely patient. She looks at it a moment longer, then back to the ledger. Margaret has fully fallen asleep on the stool. The position looks uncomfortable, spine curved, chin touching her chest, feet still tucked beneath her. But children sleep in positions that would cause an adult a week of back pain and wake refreshed. Joan watches her for a moment. 13. She thinks about herself at 13. Working beside her father, handling cloth, learning to judge quality by feel, the weight of a thread, the fineness of a weave, the way a fabric drapes when you hold it up by one corner and let it fall. She had loved it immediately. Not the commerce, at first. The cloth itself. The fact that thread became fabric and fabric became garments and garments became the visible, daily skin of a person's life. She still loves it. The commerce came later, and she came to love that too, in the way you love things that you are good at and that reward your effort. Margaret shows no sign of feeling this way about cloth. She likes the customers. She has a gift for conversation that Joan does not have, a natural ease, a way of making people feel seen and pleasant. Perhaps she will be a better shopkeeper than her mother. Or perhaps she will marry and none of this will fall to her. Both are possible. Joan finds she can hold both without distress. She pulls a folded paper from inside the ledger's back cover. The wholesaler's invoice from last Thursday. She has been working through it. This is the other side of the ledger, what she owes. The cloth she buys in order to sell. The thread. The ribbon. The small quantities of trim and button and braid that customers sometimes want matched to a fabric. She checks her figures against the invoice line by line. The arithmetic had checked out when she first went through it, and it checks out again now. But there are two charges she is still uncertain about, a small handling fee whose nature was not explained, and a discount she had been promised verbally that does not appear in writing. She makes a note in the margin. Query, handling. Query, promised discount 2s on Holland linen. She will send her boy Robert to the wholesalers tomorrow with a note. This is not a confrontation she is avoiding. It is a confrontation she is managing. Send in writing, precise and factual, it will be received better than an argument in person. She knows this man. She knows how to speak to him without creating a grievance. She folds the invoice back into the cover. She thinks about the silk ribbon. 1 yard of white silk ribbon. It was the last sale of the day, the young woman who took so long to decide. She had been deciding between the white and a pale cream. The difference was slight, visible side by side, nearly invisible when worn. Joan had laid them both across the counter, on dark cloth to show the colors clearly, and waited. The woman had taken nearly 10 minutes. Joan had been aware of the time. She had been ready to close. But she had not rushed the woman, had not shifted her weight or made any small motion that communicated impatience. Her father had taught her this also, though not in words. By example. The customer who takes time is still the customer. The moment they feel hurried, they feel disrespected, and they do not come back. The woman chose the white. Thanked her. Left. 1 yard of ribbon. A small sale. But the woman will come back. Joan is almost certain of it. The care of the choosing, the 2 lengths on dark cloth, the patient waiting, will be remembered. Customers remember how they were treated before they remember what they bought. She realizes the ink is getting low. The small pot on the table has been used down to the last 1/4 inch. She has been writing more thickly than she would like, the pen dragging slightly where the ink is too thin. There is more in the supply shelf. She stands, opens the small cupboard, finds the bottle. She pours carefully. Ink is not expensive, but it is not nothing, and spilling it on the ledger would be a minor catastrophe. She pours without spilling. Sits. Sets the pen in the ink to let the nib soak for a moment. Looks at the ledger. The entries for today stretch down 2/3 of the page. Tomorrow they will begin on the line below. By the end of the week, a new page. She has filled 32 pages of this ledger. Each page is a week, roughly. More or less 8 months of trade, in her handwriting, in the clear italic that her father taught her. When this ledger is full, she will store it on the shelf with the others. She has 4 previous ledgers. They go back 11 years, to the year she and her husband had opened this shop together. The early entries are in two hands, hers and his. Then, 3 years in, only hers. She does not open those old ledgers. But she does not consider discarding them. The sound of feet on the stairs. A boy appears in the back doorway, younger than Margaret, 9, with the look of someone who had been sent to bed and had waited a calculated amount of time before deciding he needed something. "I'm thirsty," he says. Joan points to the jug on the shelf without looking up. Robert crosses the room, pours water into a cup, drinks. Sets the cup back. Then pauses. "What are you doing?" "Accounts." "Can I watch?" "No." Bed. He looks at his sister, slumped on the stool by the fire. Margaret's not in bed. Margaret fell asleep and will regret it when I wake her. You may choose not to follow her example. He considers this. Then, "Good night." "Good night." He pads back up the stairs. She hears his feet cross the floor above. The creak of the bed. Then nothing. She looks at the fire. She turns back to the outstanding accounts page. There are 7 names on it currently. Most of them she is entirely comfortable with. Mrs. Harker has been buying cloth on credit for 4 years and settles at the end of each month with quiet efficiency. The alderman's household sends a clerk with payment twice a year and has never been late. The young lawyer who buys cloth for his wife is slower but not worrying. 2 of the 7 she is less comfortable with. One is a household she has been extending credit to for 5 months, the amount small but accumulating. The husband is a goldsmith who she believes is having a difficult season. She has heard nothing specific, only the way his wife looked when she came in last month. A particular combination of wanting things and trying not to show how much you want them. She does not write this in the ledger. She writes numbers. But she thinks it. She will continue to extend small credit and not press. But she will not extend more. The other uncomfortable name she writes nothing more about in her mind. That one she will simply watch. She turns to the page she uses for the weekly summary. This is a practice she began after her first full year alone. The daily ledger catches everything, but it is detailed, a page of individual transactions, a picture of the minute. The weekly summary is a different kind of view. A step back. What did the week look like? She writes the week's totals. Total sold, £3, 2 shillings, and 4 pence. Of which £2, 14 shillings, and 9 pence in coin. The rest outstanding, distributed across several customers, all in good standing. Total in the expense column, the bolt of ribbon she restocked, the quire of paper she bought for wrapping, the errand boy she paid on Tuesday to carry a package to Blackfriars. Small amounts. The larger expenses, the cloth itself, she tracks separately. Margin for the week, before the larger expenses. She looks at the number. It is fine. Not the best week this year. Not the worst. Somewhere comfortably in the middle. Reasonable. She becomes aware, as she sometimes does in the evenings, of the smell of the shop. During the day she does not notice it. The shop is in use during the day, people coming and going, The door opening, the noise and activity that carries its own smells with it. Coal smoke from the street. The particular smell of different customers, some pleasant and some not. Food from the cook shop 2 doors down, which she can smell when the wind is from the east. But now the door is shut. The street smells are outside. What remains is the shop itself. Cloth, primarily. Cloth has a smell that is hard to separate into its parts but that she could identify blindfolded, a faint lanolin, a hint of the dye process, a papery dryness. The smell of something transformed from raw matter into careful craft. Beeswax, from the shelf where she keeps the polishing supplies. Paper. The ledger. Old wood. The fire. This is the smell of her working life. She has never tried to describe it to anyone. She suspects it would sound like nothing described. But experienced, it is entirely specific. Entirely hers. She breathes it in without deciding to. Turns the page. She thinks about Mrs. Harker. She came in today, mid-morning, as she often does. She is a woman of about 60, a merchant's widow who manages her own affairs with the same thoroughness she apparently brought to managing her late husband's. She is pleasant, specific, and unhurried. Today she had wanted to look at the wool. Not to buy, she said this at the outset, which Joan appreciated. She was looking. Thinking about winter. Letting herself see what was available before she made a decision. Joan had shown her what she had. Unrolled bolts, held fabric to the window light, answered questions. They had talked, while this was happening, about the weather and about a recent fire in a street near the river and about the quality of the wool from Flanders this season versus last. Mrs. Harker had left without buying and with genuine thanks. She will return in a week or 2. She will buy enough to matter. Joan knows this the way she knows many things about her regular customers, not from a single interaction but from the accumulated texture of dozens of them. The pattern that builds, over time, into something reliable. She is grateful for customers like Mrs. Harker. Not only for the business. For the company. For the conversations that are about cloth but also about the world. She looks at Margaret again. Still asleep. The position has shifted slightly. Now her head is resting against the wall, which looks more comfortable but will leave a mark on her cheek. Joan gets up and puts her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Margaret. Margaret stirs. Time for bed. Margaret blinks. Looks around the shop with the brief confusion of someone waking in the wrong place. Then focuses. Is it late? Late enough. Margaret unfolds herself from the stool. She is unsteady for a moment, the sleep still in her legs. Was I asleep the whole time? Long enough to have missed nothing and saved yourself some effort. Margaret looks at the fire, going low. Should I bank it? I'll do it. I could. Bed. Thank you. Margaret takes a candle from the shelf, tilts it to the fire to light it, and goes upstairs. Her footsteps cross the ceiling above, slower than her brother's. Joan stands alone in the shop. She crosses to the hearth. The fire has burned down to coals in the hour she has been working. This is fine, coal keeps better than wood, and she switched to coal for the evening fire some time ago. It is cleaner than wood and burns long. She takes the small tongs and arranges the coals. Draws them together at the center. A compact mass holds heat better than a scattered one. She does not let the fire go out. A fire taken down to nothing means starting from scratch in the morning, a cold house for the children, a delay to the day's beginning. She banks it, a piece of damp peat laid over the coals, damping the burn without extinguishing it. It will hold through the night and be coaxable to flame in the morning with a little air from the bellows. She has done this so many times that her hands know the motion. The peat settles. The fire dims to a red glow beneath it. Good. She stands. She returns to the table. The ledger is still open. She has not finished. There is the inventory to update. This she does weekly, not daily. She moves through the stock in her mind, checking against the list she keeps in the back of the ledger. The bolts of cloth she started the week with, minus what she sold, equals what remains. The Holland linen, started with 9 yards. Sold 3 today, 2 earlier in the week. 4 yards remain. The black serge, started with 12 yards. Sold 2 today. 10 remain. The russet wool, sold 5 today. 3 remain. The green damask, started with 6 yards. 6 yards remain. She writes this down without comment. The damask does not deserve comment in the ledger. It deserves a buyer. She works through the rest of the inventory. Ribbon. Trim. The wool in 3 weights. The small stock of linen she keeps for the summer trade. Nothing is alarming. Nothing is alarmingly short. She needs to reorder the Holland linen soon. She makes a note. She allows herself to think, briefly, about the draper on the other side of the lane. He has been there for 2 years. He is younger than she is, maybe 30, and has a certain confidence that she thinks is only partly earned. He expanded his stock last spring in a direction that she also considered and decided against: heavy imported wool, Turkish in origin, expensive and fashionable. It has sold well for him. She will not pretend otherwise. She saw the customers going in. She had decided against the Turkish wool because she thought the fashion would pass quickly and the price of carrying unsold stock was too high a risk for a shop her size. She still thinks this. But she watches. This is not envy. It is professionalism. She is interested in what he sells and what sells for him because she is interested in the trade. What moves and what doesn't, what customers are wanting this year that they didn't want last year. She does not know the man well. He is polite. She is polite. The lane contains both of them, and that is that. She closes the thought. There are 2 letters on the corner of the table. They arrived today. She has read them but not responded. The first is from her brother in Bristol. He is a wool merchant there, dealing in raw fleeces where she deals in finished cloth. They write several times a year. The letter is long and contains news of his family, a complaint about the customs duties on Bristol trade, and a question about prices for dyed wool in London. He is considering expanding and wants her sense of the market. The second is from her late husband's family. His sister, who lives in Southwark and writes twice a year with the regularity of a calendar. Cordial news. News of her children. A brief inquiry about Joan's health. She will answer both this week. The letter to her brother will be longer. She has opinions about the London wool market. She always does. She folds the letters and slides them inside the ledger's front cover, where she keeps correspondence that needs a reply. The ledger holds a great deal. It is becoming a kind of portable office. She sits back for a moment and considers tomorrow. The market in Cheapside will be busy. It is always busy on Thursdays. Busy markets mean foot traffic in her lane, which means potential customers who are in the neighborhood for other purposes and drift in. She should put the green damask in the window. Not all of it, you don't show everything at once, but a length, folded so the pattern catches the light. Thursday is the best day for it. The people who walk through Cheapside on a Thursday are the people who might actually buy a damask. She makes a note. She also wants to speak to her supplier's agent, who usually passes on Thursdays with samples. She needs to discuss the next order. She has been thinking about lighter wool for the autumn trade. The weather has been milder than usual and the heavy weights are not moving as she expected. She makes another note. These notes go in the margin of the ledger page. Small arrows. Abbreviated words. A language that only she can read, but that she can read immediately. Tomorrow will take care of itself, with a little preparation. The candle on the table is burning low. She reaches to the shelf for a fresh one. She has been careful about candles since the price of tallow went up last autumn. She doesn't waste them, she lights them when she needs them and puts them out when she doesn't, but she doesn't stint either. A shop where you cannot see clearly is a shop where mistakes happen. She lights the fresh candle from the stub. Lets the stub burn another minute to be certain it is truly spent. The new flame is bright and steady. She trims the wick with a small pair of scissors. Trimming a wick makes the light steadier and the candle last longer. Her mother had taught her this. A small domestic economy that compounds across a year of evenings. She looks at the flame for a moment. Steady flame. She has always found steadiness restful. Not the flare and die. Just the consistent, purposeful burning. She turns back to the ledger. She is almost done. The final entries for the day are the small ones. The things that don't fit neatly into the sales column or the expense column but that need to be written down somewhere. The note about the Holland linen reorder. The invoice queries to raise with the wholesaler tomorrow. The note about the damask in the window Thursday. She writes these on a separate slip of paper that she keeps at the front of the ledger. This is her task list. It lives in the ledger because the ledger lives on the table and the table is where she does the work. When a task is done, she draws a line through it. The satisfaction of drawing a line through a task is not nothing. She looks at the slip now. 3 items from earlier in the week that have been crossed out. The ones she has just added, waiting. She draws a small mark beside each new one. Not a cross yet. That comes when the thing is done. She turns to the final page of the day's entries. One last addition. The overall position. This is something she does at the end of each week, but she does a rough version each night too. Not to calculate, exactly, more to feel where she stands. The week's sales, solid. The outstanding, manageable, mostly trustworthy. The upcoming expenses, the wholesaler invoice, the potential reorder. The position, fine. Better than fine, if Thursday brings what she hopes. She closes the ledger. There is a satisfying weight to a closed ledger. All that information, compressed into the binding, held there. She runs her hand across the cover. Her father's word comes to her again. A ledger that lies to you is worse than no ledger at all. Hers does not lie. She becomes aware of the city. London never fully sleeps, but it changes pitch at this hour. The cart traffic that is allowed only after dark, the city's ordinance for keeping the daytime streets clear of heavy wagons, moves through the larger streets now. She can hear the creak and rumble of wheels on cobblestones at a distance. A watchman's call. Far off. The hour, she thinks, though she cannot make out the words. Somewhere nearby, voices. Not the voices of trouble, just two people talking outside a door before going in. The sort of conversation that has no urgency. London is enormous. She has thought about this more, since her husband died. The way the city contains so many people going about their evenings at the same time. In the houses on this lane, and on the lanes beyond, and in the great houses along the river, and in the rookeries she prefers not to think about, people are going through the same motions she is going through. Finishing. Tallying. Preparing. All of them separate. All of them part of the same vast organism. She is one thread in a very large cloth. She finds this thought, when she reaches for it, more comforting than lonely. She goes to the front of the shop and checks the shutters. They are latched properly. She checks them every night, not from anxiety but from the habit of checking. The latches are iron. Old. Her father had them made. They are solid things. She lifts one corner of the shutter slightly and looks out through the gap. The lane is narrow and dark. A lantern at the far end throws a pool of orange light onto the cobblestones. A cat sits in the middle of it, washing its face with complete disregard for the hour. She watches the cat for a moment. The lamp at the end of the lane is a parish lamp. The city requires lanterns at the major intersections, lit at night. She pays a small rate for it. She has never complained about this payment. The light serves a real purpose. She lets the shutter fall. Latched. She turns back to the shop. She does what she does most evenings before she goes up. She walks the perimeter of the shop. Not with any specific purpose. Just the checking that is not quite checking. Running her hand along the bolts as she passes. Feeling the familiar textures. The russet wool. Rough, warm, the kind of cloth that has been keeping people alive through English winters for centuries. There is something ancient about it. Unchanged. The Holland linen. Smooth and dense. The sort of cloth you use for shirts, for household linens, for the things that are nearest to the skin and so must be soft. The serge. Black and tight woven. The cloth of mourning and of clergymen and of people who want to look serious. The green damask. She pauses here. In the firelight and candlelight, With no bright window to compete, the damask shows its pattern clearly. The woven flowers. The green on green. It is genuinely beautiful. She stands looking at it. She has a thought she doesn't follow to its end, something about beauty that exists whether or not it sells, whether or not anyone comes on Thursday and sees it in the window. She folds the edge back neatly. Moves on. She opens the door to the back room. This is the storage space, and it is exactly what storage spaces are, organized according to a logic that exists only in her head, full of things in various states of waiting. The crate of wrapped ribbon, she has 3 colors in stock, plus the white she sold today, which needs restocking from the ribbon box. The spare weights for the scale. The paper, the quire she bought this week for wrapping purchases, and an older partial quire. The small stock of needles and pins, because customers sometimes ask. The shelf of cleaning supplies, the beeswax, the small brush, the cloth for polishing the iron fittings. She looks at it all. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is missing that should be here. Nothing is here that she doesn't know about. She closes the door. She takes the ledger from the table and puts it on the shelf. This is a locked shelf. The ledger does not need to be locked away. It is not a thing anyone would steal, but it lives behind a locked door because that is where she keeps the things that matter most to the business. The cash box is there. The outstanding invoices. The order book. The ledger belongs among them. She slides it into its place. On either side of it, the older ledgers. Thicker spines, slightly bent from years of being held open. Her handwriting on the covers, in the same clear italic, the years marked. 11 years of trade. She looks at the row of them for a moment. Her father had said, once, that the books would outlast him. He'd meant it practically. Accounts need to be kept long after the seasons they cover, for disputes, for taxes, for the records that sometimes matter years later. But there is another way to read it. She locks the shelf. She locks the cash box last. She takes it from the table to the shelf. The weight of it shifts as she carries it. A good weight. The solid presence of coin, of what the day produced. She sets it on the shelf beside the ledger. Locks the shelf. The key goes around her neck again, where it will stay until morning. This is the last act that makes the shop secure. The ledger closed. The fire banked. The shutters latched. The cash boxed and locked. Everything accounted for. She has the particular feeling she gets at this moment most evenings. A sense of, what? Not pride exactly. Not relief, quite. Something like completion. The way a sum that balances feels. The right number in the right place. She turns from the shelf. She takes her candle and moves to the base of the stairs. She pauses. She always pauses here for a moment before going up. She is not sure when this habit began. It has the quality of things that establish themselves without your noticing. One day you realize you have been doing a thing for years. She stands at the foot of the stairs and simply lets the shop be around her. The fire, glowing low. The cloth on the walls. The table, cleared. The smell of the place. It is her father's shop. In a practical sense, it is hers. She has owned it for 8 years and worked it for 11. But she does not think of it as hers in the way she might think of her own hands as hers. She thinks of it as passing through her, as she passed through it when she was younger. Someday Margaret may stand here, or she may not. What the shop will be is not something Joan can determine. What she can determine is what it is right now. Today. Tonight. In good order. She begins to climb the stairs. The house has 2 upper stories. The second floor is divided, her room at the front, the children's room at the back. A small landing between them, barely wide enough to turn. She pauses on the landing. From behind the children's door, silence. Both of them asleep now. Robert, who went up hours ago, Margaret, who had to be sent. She opens the door an inch and looks. 2 shapes in the darkness. Robert on his side, knees drawn up. Margaret flat on her back with the unconscious abandon of someone who has fully surrendered to sleep. She closes the door quietly. Her room is at the front. The windows face the lane, which means she woke to the sounds of a city early for many years until she learned to sleep through them. She goes in. The room is simple. A bed, wider than it needs to be for one person, but she has never seen the point of changing it. A chest for clothes. A small table with a basin and jug. A chair she uses rarely. A shelf with a Bible, a book of household receipts, and a small portrait, painted on wood, of her husband that she had commissioned after he died and that she is glad she had. She sets the candle on the table. She begins to undress. The day clothes, the dark stuff gown she wears in the shop, practical and decent, are folded and put in the chest. The stays, loosened with the particular relief that comes at day's end. The linen she will wash tomorrow. She pours water from the jug into the basin. Washes her face and hands. The water is cold. She has long since stopped minding this. She dries her face on the cloth beside the basin. Looks at herself briefly in the small mirror. A woman of 41. Fine lines at the eyes, at the corners of the mouth. Her mother's face, increasingly. Her father's forehead. She turns from the mirror without drama. She goes to the window before getting into bed. The lane below is dark except for the parish lamp at the end. The cat is gone. The lane is empty. She looks up. A gap between the rooftops shows a strip of sky. London sky, which is never quite truly dark. The fires and lanterns of the city give it a faint glow, the color of amber very diluted. But above the glow, stars are visible in the gap. A scatter of them. She has lived in this city her entire life. She has rarely thought of it as a sky hiding place. But on nights like this, looking up through the gap in the rooftops, she is aware that beyond the amber glow there is an enormous darkness full of ordinary stars. The same stars her father saw. She stands at the window until the cold from the glass reaches her through her linen. Then she lets the curtain fall. The bed is made the way she makes it every morning, tight and proper. She turns back the coverlet. The wool blanket underneath. The linen sheets, cool and clean. She gets in. The mattress settles. Feather, she had a straw mattress when she was first married and replaced it as soon as she could. The feather mattress is an indulgence she has never regretted. She lies on her back for a moment, looking up at the ceiling. The ceiling of this room is the underside of the floorboards of the story above. A lodger lived up there for 6 years, a clerk who paid his rent on the first of every month without exception and moved away when he married. She has not replaced him. She thinks sometimes that she should. The income would be useful. She thinks sometimes that she should not. The house feels right at its current size. She has not decided. This, too, can wait. She is aware, lying in the dark, of a settled feeling. The accounts are balanced. She doesn't mean this metaphorically, she means literally, mathematically. The figures in the ledger agree with the figures in her head and the figures in the cash box. The day's transactions are recorded accurately. The outstanding accounts are noted. The week's position is clear. This is what the evening ritual produces. Not the money itself. Money comes and goes, is owed and paid, accumulates and is spent. But clarity. She knows where she stands. There is a particular calm in this. Not the calm of having no problems. She has problems, the green damask, the 2 accounts she watches carefully, the invoice dispute, the question of the roof. Real problems, real uncertainties. But known. Written down. Problems written down have already been more than half managed. They exist in the ledger, which will remember them for her. She does not have to carry them into sleep. She can set them down. She thinks about her children in the room behind her. Robert, 9. He has his father's directness, walks into a room as if he has already decided where he is going. He has shown, recently, a surprising interest in the cloth. He likes to touch the different weights. He asks questions about where things come from. She does not want to assume too much from this. But she notices. Margaret, 13. The ease with people that Joan has never quite had. The way she moves through conversations, the way Joan moves through the cloth, handling it well, knowing by feel where the quality is. She is already, Joan thinks, more capable of charm than her mother. This is not a criticism of herself. It is a quality she recognizes and admires without possessing. What her children will make of their lives she cannot know. She can give them the ground. The house, secure. The shop, demonstrated. The knowledge that work done carefully and honestly produces something real. What they build on the ground is theirs. She thinks about her husband. Thomas had been a good man in the ways that are hardest to define. Reliable without being rigid, generous without being careless, funny in a quiet way that she had always found more satisfying than louder kinds of humor. He had understood the trade. Better than she had, in some ways, when they were first starting out. He had a gift for buying, for finding the moment to commit to a shipment of cloth and commit to the right amount. She had learned from him. She had understood accounts better than he had. He had learned from her. It had been a fair arrangement. She does not let herself remain here long. She has given herself a rule, maintained with moderate success. She will think about Thomas when it feels natural to think about him, and she will not force herself to stop. But she will not pursue it into the places that still hurt without purpose. She remembers him. She sets the remembering down. She breathes. The city outside is quieter now. Not quiet, London is never quiet. But the texture of the sound has changed. The cart traffic in the larger streets has thinned. The calls of the watchmen are the main sound now, receding and approaching in their circuits. Someone in the lane below walks past. A single pair of feet on cobblestones. Even and unhurried. Then nothing. She is aware of the house around her. The rooms below, the shop with its cloth and its fire, banked and holding. The cash box on its locked shelf. The ledger beside it, carrying the day. The rooms beside her and above, Robert's steady breathing she cannot actually hear but imagines she can. Margaret, still. The particular warmth of a house at night, full of sleeping people. She is the last one awake. She has always been the last one awake. This does not feel like a burden. It feels like her place. She closes her eyes. The images of the day move through her without urgency. Mrs. Harker's hands on the holland linen, feeling the weave. The maidservant from the minister's household, precise and quick. The young woman with the ribbon, taking her time, choosing white. The russet wool buyer, unknown, whose face she can see clearly. He will come on Thursday, she thinks, or he won't. She will know Thursday. The green damask, in the firelight. The ledger, closed. The coins, counted. She lets them pass. One image, then the next, then the next. They are not problems. They were the day. They are passing from the day into the account that sleep keeps, the one she will never tally. She breathes. In. Out. The cash box is locked. The ledger is right. The fire will hold. Margaret and Robert are asleep. The shop is in good order. The candle on the table beside her has burned low. She should have put it out. She meant to. She is too close to sleep now to do it. It will burn out on its own. She has left candles to burn before. The waste is small. Tomorrow she will use the stub. The city is there. She is here. The shop is below. The ledger is closed. There is nothing tonight that cannot wait for morning. She breathes. The candle flickers once, a draft from somewhere, a movement of air, and steadies again. Steady flame. This is what she has worked toward. Not security exactly, nothing is ever quite secure. But steadiness. The capacity to continue. The accounts balance. The children are sleeping. The day is done. Breathe in. Breathe out. The city murmurs on without her. And she is already gone.